Hi, and welcome to Heart-Centered Success. I'm your host, Diane Hayward, and I am really excited about what we're talking about today. As you know, in Heart-Centered Success, I love to explore topics that help people understand how they can reach a level of success that comes from their inner divine, where they're really experiencing satisfaction, fulfillment in all areas of their life. So when we're talking about success, we certainly mean business, finances, but it's also health, it's wellness, it's relationships, success in all areas of your life. And today, our topic is divine partnerships. So while we're discussing today, I want you to be asking yourself some questions. Where do I have divine partnerships in my own life? Where could I make some partnerships more divine? And how do I tap into that real divine connected part of me to make not only my partnerships, but every part of my life better? So that's what I want you to be thinking about when we're talking today, and I think you're going to be really excited about who we've got. The very first guest we have is Melly Ponpada, the CEO of SOAR Community Network. Melly, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to have you. And right next to her is one of her divine partnerships, Victor Cora Nazario. He is the COO of SOAR Community Network. Victor, thank you. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then we have someone who's very familiar and contributed lots to this program, and that's my very good friend, Sherry Goodwin. She is a strategist, a leadership coach, one of my best buddies in the world. I'm so glad to welcome her back. Sherry, thanks for being here.
It's an honor, truly. Thank you, Diane.
So let's get right down to it. Melly, when I contacted you about divine partnerships, what kinds of ideas did that bring to mind for you? What did that mean?
Well, first and foremost, it felt really nice because it came from you, and I know how important speaking of things that come from the divine, or speaking of things that are about connection and consciousness and awakenings, it just made me feel so, I guess, honored, grateful that you thought of me and you thought of my partnership with Victor. So that was the first feeling, which is gratitude. Gratitude. Yes.
Tell me a little bit about your partnership with Victor.
Victor and I are in business together, and we are husband and wife, and we are best friends, and we are life partners. And it has been an interesting journey because we've known each other for so many years. Even in my previous life, in my previous career, he was a client of mine and he was a friend of mine. So we've been friends for over a decade. And I think that makes the partnership stronger. That makes the relationship, the love relationship, the marriage stronger, because we base everything on the fact that we're on the same team always.
So Victor, what do you have to add to that? I know that a lot of people out there are thinking, wonderful that it works for you, but sometimes working with your spouse may not be the easiest. What made you, first of all, decide that this would be a good idea to work with Melly?
Well, Melly is very persuasive.
So that was the first.
Yes. I was in IT for about 24 years. Great career. Started in the Air Force and finished being department head. So, and I've always been very careful about money. So it was a big decision, but I believe in her. That's the first thing, right? So I really trust her. So if she tells me, yes, it's gonna work, I still do due diligence, but for the most part, I already made the decision. Once she says, we can really do this, honey, because she knows me. She knows I'm careful. So that's what. So the decision was, I wouldn't say easy, but when she said, I really need you, we can do this, I decided to go ahead and do it.
So it was a very thoughtful process for you.
Yes.
And I heard you say a word that I think is really, at least for me, really indicative of understanding when something's a divine partnership, and that's trust.
Yes.
You've known each other as friends. Now you've been married, 4 years now?
Almost
Yes.
four.
Almost 4 years.
Yeah.
And so you knew her work ethic. Mm-hmm. She knew yours. But there has to be a level of trust.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's something that I think comes from a divine place.
Yeah, so I think that's the main thing. In the end, it's still a gut feeling. Right. I mean, there has to be a balance between your emotion and your intellect. It can't be all intellect. If not, you'll never do anything. Because you can't be sure of everything that you're going to address, right? Yes.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Sherry, what do you have to add about divine partnerships? Now, you've got a little, so here's my here's my strategy for having Sherry here. Everybody here is entrepreneurs. They all have their own businesses. And actually, you all deal with lots of leaders, CEOs, executives, that kind of thing. But one thing Sherry does beautifully is integrate horses and equine aspect into her coaching. And what I've seen her do with these animals is nothing short of a divine partnership. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, thank you. And thank you again for having me back here. Once again, it's just such an honor really to be here. And when you told me you were talking about this topic and you invited me, I thought, wow, I was so humbled and actually a little scared to talk about this because it's pretty personal, it's pretty intimate. Trust is basically my domain. That's where I work. That's what pretty much defines my work. It's at the core of everything, whether I'm working with business development, leadership development, somebody going through a reinvention. I'm doing a lot of reinvention work right now with companies and with individuals. And so what happens in reinvention is your trust gets challenged in pretty much every possible area. Your self-trust, your trust in others, your trust in your greater purpose and in the universe. So when I think about divine partnerships, I really think about, how much can I tap into my own inner faith and my own inner trust, and then how much can I bring that out to trust another? And in the context of a horse, I have several horses. I have a new horse that I'm working with now who's an ex-race horse, and he's very close to his fight-flight instinct because everything is new. So he's out of there in a second, and he's 1,000 pounds, and when he decides to move, you better clear out.
Yeah.
So there's a trust piece that we're starting to establish as he moves forward and looks at a new career.
And that's the other thing that I think is so fascinating is I think it's often really easy for us to think of partnerships in romantic situations or in business situations, but that's not where it stops. There are divine partnerships with animals, with organizations, to me, with ideas. I've seen people fall in love not only with other people, but with particular ideas. I've got a friend that I am convinced has a divine partnership with poetry. And he says something so gorgeous. I asked him about, where does this beautiful poetry comes from? He said that he goes inside and he simply listens and writes what he hears. How gorgeous is that?
Beautiful, yeah.
Talk about that divine partnership with that inner divine, which is probably the first kind of divine partnership we have, right? Let's talk a little bit about maybe some definitions of divine partnerships. Melly, what would you say helps define what you would consider a divine partnership?
Well, for me, I think, everything that provides harmony and flow is divine for me. When things fall into place without really having to manipulate anything or put extra energy into something, that to me is divine. I have a divine relationship with poetry. I have a divine relationship with music because it does something to me. I have a divine relationship with nature. So raindrops and the sounds of birds, to me, gives me that harmony I seek. I always tell people that when I have very difficult times or struggles or challenges in my life, I always go to that internal compass. And the internal compass is a place where you feel the most in harmony with self and the world. And that's what I say is divine. It doesn't have to be religious at all.
Right.
It's just a feeling of serenity and peace that wells up inside of you. It's like going back to your soul when it was peaceful and calm before everything happened, kind of thing.
So isn't that a wonderful concept, going back to your soul? Because really, it's not like our soul ever leaves us, is it? It's that I'll speak for myself, I just kind of get over here somewhere and have to pull myself back into center sometime more consciously. I love what you said. Victor, what would you add to that?
It's kind of like along the same lines. That's why we get along so well. I would say, one of the things that is trust, but also is serving. I think we're all here to serve. I mean, I'm here to serve you, even though I don't know you that well. But between each other, definitely, right? So even when my wife has something hard to tell me, I don't take it, I take it as advice instead of being defensive because I know she loves me. So as long as that's squared away, I can take whatever she tells me, and process it the right way. If you get too defensive, then that's a problem. So I think it's about trust, first, and also serving each other. Once we know that, then everything else just works, I think.
And you mentioned something else really important, that any comments are served with love.
Yes.
That it's a loving connection that is, and I think that's a great way to help define divine partnerships. When you think that there is that loving connection, so that you can, it's easy to understand the difference between what might be seen as criticism if you're not maybe in the right headspace, I would say. But when you know that there's that foundation of love and that it's coming from within and it's got trust right on top of it, yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Sherry, what about you?
You guys are so eloquent. Really, I think what the only thing I would add is going a little bit more into that space of love. You know, if you, and love is such a, it can be such a heavy topic. And when I was actually told by a corporate CEO, don't mention love. I'm going to hire you to do this talk, but don't use the L word. And I just laughed, fine. So I called it confidence and trust. Yeah, there you go. It's all good.
We all know what it was.
But really, it's for me, it's about that feeling space. Right, and Victor, you mentioned kind of the head thing, or you can't always be up in your head making. It's not always rational. I forgot exactly what you said, but there's a feeling, and there's that. It's like your entire being lights up, or it's drawn. It's kind of drawn to something, and it may not make any sense whatsoever, but you need to go forth and figure that out. What is that? Just go out of curiosity, but it starts as that feeling. I'm coming down here, I don't know why really, but I'm feeling drawn to do that. And that's what it is for me. And I've found that maybe it's the gut, the enteric nervous system. I was a former scientist for 20 years, so I'm always looking at this neuroscience of the responses that we have, kind of the physiological stuff that's going on. But kind of, okay, so here is this gut information, heart information. Now it's telling me, it's guiding me. Maybe it's higher wisdom, I don't know, but I must follow. I must follow. I am compelled to follow.
Right.
And believe me, I have followed down all kinds of crazy paths in my years, and some not so good, some really amazing.
Right.
I think that's also a pretty important part. There's, for me, there's this feeling of, it's almost like being pulled toward a direction, an idea, a person. There needs just that little something that I am just feeling needs to be explored.
Yeah.
I hopefully try to do everything from a foundation of love. Some days not so good, better some days than others, but for me it's a constant process and one that I'm always trying to get better at. But I've found that the places in my life where I really feel like I've had divine partnerships, first of all, they were not always easy. I do want to make that clear. I don't think divine partnerships always have to be super easy, although I really agree there is a flow to them. There really is a flow to them. Some of the most divine partnerships I've ever had actually were tough. They were pretty rough. And I realized there was a tremendous learning opportunity in that for me. What I also find is when I have not listened to that little voice, or I said, yeah, I hear you, but I got this other way to do it, that's where things would go south. Can you guys relate to that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wonderful when you get the message and you listen and you act accordingly. And that's one of the things that I talk about in heart-centered success, having your passion and your purpose fuel your actions. That to me has always yielded more beneficial results than when I just was like, okay, head, what are we going to do here? That just never worked for me. Well, it didn't work all that great. I'll put it that way. I'll put it that way. Do you have anything else to add to that, or?
One thing that came to mind when you were sharing that is the the divine partnership piece. Not so much that it's easy all the time, like you said. Some of the most divine experiences have been with relationships that have had conflict and tension. And one thing that I will say for me personally is having partnerships with others is so important, and that's why the SOAR Community Network, the word community and network are both in that for a reason, right? We need a network of people that's more pragmatic, more logical, go get it done, but we need a community. That's the more spiritual feeling, emotional feeling of belonging to something. And I think when you want to expand on your partnerships, having other people help you navigate the difference between old fear and intuition. because fear and intuition, when at peak, feel similar, right? And so, and you're living inside your body, and old traumas come up, and being able to kind of, especially in my case, having a partner who thinks differently, although we want the same end result, is helpful, because you have a different perspective. You have someone who can help go deeper into questioning, where is that coming from? Is it fear, or is it really faith and trust that you're walking toward before you make a decision?
And there's just a lovely complementary aspect to it, right? I mean, I know, especially in Western cultures, I think there's this myth of dysfunctional independence. You know, I have to do everything on my own, and I gotta. Athletes I will see sometimes talk about, you know, they've won this race or they've gotten this medal. You know, I did it all myself. Really, did you? What about the coaches and the parents that took you to swim practice or whatever it was? There are so many times, I think, that if we were more conscious about creating alliances and partnerships, we could just do so much more, and it would be so much more fun. Because just like you said, when someone doesn't think the way you do, there's always a benefit to that. So we're going to see what you think about that in a minute. Right now, we're going to take a quick break.
When I look in the mirror,
do I like what I see?
Yes. I like my teeth and I like my tongue. I like my nose. I like my ears.
And my eyes.
And I like my face. Me gusta todo.
I see a perfect reflection of me.
And I wouldn't change a single thing.
Because I am enough.
Fairfax County is one of the wealthiest counties in the country, but there are currently over 1,200 people that are homeless. 59% of the adults in these families are working but unable to locate affordable housing.
Shelter House is an organization that works with the homeless to provide services that promote self-sufficiency. Housing is the key to getting these Fairfax citizens back on their feet.
We're looking to connect prospective tenants with landlords that are willing to give them a chance. If you or someone you know is a landlord and has a property to rent, please contact the Shelter House.
Taking care of a family member can lead to plenty of questions. Fortunately, there's a place to get the answers, for them and for you. Find articles, tips, and tools from experts and others who have been in your place. The Caregiving Resource Center at aarp.org/caregiving.
Hi, it's Diane Hayworth. Welcome back to Heart-Centered Success. Today we're talking about divine partnerships. And we just left off talking about how much more fun it is, how much more joyful it is when you do things in community, when you do things in partnership. Sherry, I want to ask you about something. Now, we heard from Melly and Victor about partnerships and the sort of community network and why that's important. But you have a different network. You have a different partnership. They've got hooves and they're furry, and they don't necessarily get a paycheck, but they're very invested in your work. Like they know they have jobs, don't they? Tell us about that. Tell us about your herd.
And they do get paid. They get paid really, really, really well. They get great hay and wonderful turnout and all kinds of love. But yeah, so I have 5 horses that support me as part of the work that I do. And I have 2 programs. I call it Alpha Horse Leadership for Humans, and that's one that I've been running, about 8 years now, and it's pretty fun. We get folks in there, and the horse teaches them about nonverbal communication, energy and intention, and leadership. Lots of really amazing things. We do simulated work with work scenarios with the horse. So what happens there as far as partnering is concerned is the horse is reading the energy and the intention of the folks in the room and reacting certain ways. So if they're clear with their intent, maybe the horse will move forward and do something. If they're not, the horse may stand still or it may leave. And none of this is riding. They're all free in an enclosed space. So I've been doing that for a long time. And it's really interesting to see what happens, because the horse is truly partnering with the people and trying to figure out and say, okay, I'm part of your group, or am I leading this group? Who am I with respect to this group? There's a lot of identity shifting that happens as in any kind of team. Sometimes you get a project and the team lead is leading it, but this other person who's on the team is actually better at the work and they end up being the de facto leader. So that happens sometimes with the horses too. Sometimes the horse is waiting for someone else to lead, and sometimes they're like, y'all aren't leading, I'm leading. So they just start guiding the people, and it's pretty interesting. We do a lot of debriefing on all of this. The other piece of collaboration, this new program that I started just this year, involves my new ex-racehorse, and this is totally different. So what I've done is basically peeled back the curtain on my work and said, I invited people to come in once a month and sit and watch for an hour and a half. It's just an hour and a half while I coach, Lemon Squeezy is his name, through his own reinvention process. And so it's all a collaborative effort. They're part of this journey. They're asking questions. They're making observations, sharing insights. I'm coaching him. He's giving me feedback. He's giving me feedback on all kinds of things he likes, doesn't like, where he's scared. You talked about fear and faith and trust. It's all right there, because the horse is really showcasing all of these different kinds of emotions and where you're clear or not clear right there in real time. So it's pretty magical. It's a pretty incredible partnership. And as we're working, we're developing deeper partnerships. And one of the things that I didn't realize was when I first started doing this work, I've ridden my entire life, I've been around horses my entire life, but I didn't know anything about this stuff until about 10 years ago. And I started exploring it, and what I found was that my partnerships with my herd, and some of them I've had since birth, have been with me since they're babies or before, has deepened, really deepened. And so when we get into something with a team or even an individual, they'll be asked, the horse will ask questions of me, or will show up in a different way because they've developed and matured in our relationship. And so sometimes they'll ask me for help, which is really, really interesting. And it's just a constantly evolving dynamic and deepening of the partnerships. Pretty amazing.
Well, the other thing that's so interesting is that's also a family business. They have a family business. Yeah. You have a family business. Really, you do.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it's not like they go home.
Yeah, right.
They live there.
Yep.
So it's just another way, and that's what I think is so important and really interesting for us to remember is divine partnerships don't look a certain way, right? They don't. I think the variety is what makes it so rich. I know we were talking off camera about cultural differences and how rich and how that can enhance experiences. All of those are the kinds of elements I think that go into really wonderful divine partnerships. At least that's what I think.
Yeah.
I think that's actually really lovely. Now, with you all, you guys are looking, because you noticed, you made sure we understood there was a network and a community. So how do you find network partners? How do you know that this is the right network partner for you, for example?
I think it's, we practice what we teach and what we go inside companies to consult on, which is really understanding our own personal vision and mission for what we want to do to serve the community that really resonates with us. And in our case, we want to go inside organizations and really help re-engineer their corporate DNA, because we know that our core values, Victor and I both, our number one core value is family. And because it's family, like he would do anything for his family, I would do anything for my family. And so when you bring upon a unit, making two people into one, having that similar or same exact number one core value is the divinity piece that you're talking about. It just feels so good. It feels like so right. And if we can help organizations really understand what their true core values are, and then help every single person inside the organization, which is a member of their family, understand their own core values and how they can really bridge any gaps, that would be our vision for our work, which is really re-engineering the DNA so everybody remembers they're from the same family. That's really the work that we aspire to do.
So it's a clarity piece.
Absolutely.
A lot of that divine partnership has to do with clarity, understanding clarity of purpose, understanding clarity of where you want to go. You don't necessarily, it's what I'm hearing, you don't necessarily always know exactly how to get there, because those things change, like you said, depending on who shows up for some of those programs, how the horses show up, how the clients show up. You all must have the same kind of thing. But that clarity, to me, is an important piece. Have you seen that at work? Because you used to do technical work, okay, that is something I'm so not clear about.
Right.
Like, that is not my divine thing at all. Ask my kids, ask anybody that's ever worked for me. But for you, that was not a big deal. And that even when we talked off camera, just your comments, it's just really interesting to me. That's the way your brain works. How do you see clarity as part of a divine partnership?
Well, at the beginning when I started this work, I just was thinking of doing the back end stuff, right? Like the boring stuff, admin or whatever. But I'm very drawn to this work because actually, looking back at my career, having department heads and C-level people that had clarity would have helped me a lot more.
I bet it would.
And if I had that skill that I've acquired while working with SOAR, I think I would have been even more successful. I think I was pretty successful. The owners trusted me. I could do whatever I want because they trusted me and things were going well. But I always have problems with other department heads being clear about what they wanted and how I could help them even excel higher than where we were. So I think that clarity for IT people is actually the most important thing. To me, the technical stuff you can learn from a book.
Some of us can.
Yeah, right, yeah. But there's other stuff around clarity and having the same vision and mission and being aligned. I think that's the hardest thing to do for any, especially IT person.
Right.
Because for IT folks, that's what you call frou-frou stuff. But it's not, believe me. I think that's the most important thing, even for somebody that's really technical.
I really love this idea of clarity as a piece of the divine partnerships. I know when personally I've been drawn to people, places, ideas, whatever it's been, it's almost like that light bulb just gets brighter and brighter as I allow the clarity to come through. Sherry, how does that work for you?
Yeah, it's the same thing. In fact, in a recent workshop we were going through, I was thinking about core leadership competencies, and there's books and tomes and lists, and SHRM has all kinds of stuff out there, and it's all good. But really, what does it mean? So in my world, it's really about being calm, clear, and confident. So if you have all three, because if you come at this from a place of scattered energy, you're not calm, and so the clarity then becomes compromised. But if you have the calm, then you have the clarity, and then you have the confidence to execute, or the confidence to delegate, or the confidence to partner, then you can start seeing really magical impact. And when I work with a lot of folks without horses as well, I work with folks all over the country, and the core work is always, it comes from the horses. So no matter who I'm working with or what I'm doing, that's the core piece. Calm, confident, clear, and it comes through curiosity. It comes through asking questions. So using a coaching process, inquiry and discovery, trying to figure out really how do we get clarity? Well, we get clarity by being curious enough to ask the right kinds of questions, or any question. Just start somewhere. It doesn't have to be a right question. And then eventually you sniff out, and you find, I'm using sniff because, right? So I work with dogs too. Horses sniff too. Horses have a great sense of smell, by the way. Big sniffers.
Big sniffers.
Who knows? You wouldn't think about that, but they do. But you sniff it out and you follow that scent, and it leads you to the truth, and it leads you to that core. And you know when you've got it because there's a resonance, there's an emotional, there's a full being response to that core truth, and you know when you've got it.
And that speaks to the trust and the flow that they were talking about, doesn't it? I think that's so important. And just, I just hope you all are getting that this stuff can be really fun. I mean, really, when you find the right people, organizations, because a lot of times it's not even a particular person, it's an organization, it's a community, it's the network, it's the horses, the dogs, my cat is my office manager. That's who I work with. You laugh, Victor, it's true. Follow me on Facebook, son, you'll see. But I will talk things over with her. Now, she doesn't say a lot, but it gives me a place to just verbalize some things that are going on. I certainly have coaches and people like that support me, but it's just amazing to me what these partnerships can look like. So now I'm curious, let's talk about some of the divine partnerships you've seen, you've observed, you've been a part of. Melly, what would you say when I'm asking you what kind of divine partnerships have you seen or been a part of?
And that can be personal as well as
everything.
I think one divine partnership I would love to honor is my own personal partnership with my grandmother. And the reason why I bring that up is because it's an understanding of another human being without words. It's kind of like when you know that you have so much to share and you can look at someone in the eyes and they just, it's that empathy piece that I think is so needed in our world, and my grandmother and I had that special bond. So I use that example because I remember what that felt like and the physical act of trust that has to be practiced over time. And I find myself using that in my relationships, like being able to practice and look for cues when I'm working with clients in our mapping process, for instance, or when I am doing a retreat and there's 30 people in the room and having to really understand people without words, having to meet them where they're at because of that connection to whether we know them in the physical world or not, but more that human, soulful place where we're meeting all at the same place at the same time for a purpose and not trying to define it, just trusting that and starting there. And so that's one example I would give. Another divine partnership that I really resonate with is someone like a Sister Jenna that you and I were connected, to, and now have created this beautiful relationship. A divine relationship with someone that is doing some good in the world, that is really committed to their purpose in the world, is something I aspire to, something she continues to aspire to, obviously, and something that we want to be able to help other people aspire to, which is know yourself, but know what your purpose is, uncover it if you don't, and stand for it, and then take action.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. I wonder if your grandmother was aware of the model she was for you.
I don't think any of us really understand the ripple effect we have in our own being, in our existence, when we are just participating in life, because we don't realize that we're more than participating in life, right? We're just kind of going with the flow, but really we're setting the examples, we're setting the tones, we're creating our legacy. Every word matters. Someone's hearing something that has impacted them and they go say it and repeat it. They don't even remember where they heard it, but now it's being passed on to the next person, the next person.
Sometimes it's only in retrospect, really, that we understand some of these impacts, I think. Victor, what about you? Have you been a part of or seen what you would consider to be divine partnerships?
I think I've been lucky in that. I think most of my personal relationships feel that way. I've always felt, since I was a child, that I was always loved. I think my mother made sure that she had people around her that loved us as if we were their children. So I feel that almost all my close relationships have been like that. It's really interesting. I mean, I could think of many people, so we don't have a lot of time. My sister, for example, but of course she's my sister, but if you really know our relationship, and she knows it really well, that's why she laughs. We're like twins. We dream the same dreams. I mean, things like that, and we look out for each other, but we're always about serving as well. Even though we came up in a rough start, it's funny how we turned out that way. There's a lot of people that I grew up with also were a little bitter about their situations. And that didn't happen to us because we always had love around us.
Now, isn't that a lesson?
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. Everything else, bad things happen, good things happen, but when you have people around you that love you, you also believe in yourself, and you get to do things that maybe other people might not see in you, but as long as everybody else around you is supporting you, you get there.
And it's even more important to have those divine partnerships, right? Because all the time, our lives are not easy. Even when we have loving people around us, and blessed the way you were, things still happen.
Yeah.
And to be able to stay, from my perspective, stay connected to that inner divine and realize, I loved what you were saying, it was almost, I visually saw that you were connecting to the love in the 30 people that were in your seminar, or with your grandmother. It really just sounded like love, just love, respecting love.
It's like a vibrational
love
exchange.
To love. Yeah, and how great that is. Now, Sherry, I know that you have a million examples. I would love to have you, if it's okay, talk about your morning walk, because to me that is a beautiful example of maybe a different kind of divine partnership than people might be thinking
Oh,
about?
sure. Well, and I will answer that question, Diane, and I will do that. But I have to say first, you are one of my divine partnerships. I mean, seriously, I saw this little ad maybe 8 years ago now or something in a little community paper for some weird thing and some energy kind of weird something little with her little face. I was like, who's that? But I felt drawn, right? And this started, and I became a client at one point, and I'm a huge Diane fan, and you can pay me later. but the real thing was, it was that energetic resonance. It's that piece. She's coming from this beautiful place, and I wanted to be part of that, right? So we have this shared journey and this shared mission, and right here you've manifested this beautiful setting for us to get to know each other and share with the world. So thank you for that. So I'll answer your question. So every morning, for years and years and years, I take a walk, and I get up really early, and I do the horses, whatever, and then I take a walk, and it's
This is around your property.
our property, yeah.
Right.
And I watch the sunrise, and it's really spectacular. And in fact, so spectacular that at one point I created an offering called Sunrise Walking Meditation, and I was all fired. Yes, I'm going to share this. Not one person wanted to join me at 6:30 a.m. Why not? What's the matter? They're missing out. So anyway, so I take the morning walk, and it's so beautiful because it's a time to really just be. So the rational, I don't know, maybe not, doesn't shut off, but the thoughts stop. The thoughts are quiet, and you just feel your feet, and you just smell, and you see, and you hear, and you're part of. That's it, just part of. And it's amazing. And the horses are there, and the sun is rising, and I feel the wisdom of the ages, and I feel completely not human. I know it sounds a little crazy, but I disappear, I like evaporate, right? Really evaporate. And here's a divine partnership. So I have one with lots and lots, but with my mother. So my parents were out visiting. They live in California. They were out visiting one time, and I went for this walk. They were not up because it's California time, And I came back, and my mom said, she was up, and she says, I got really scared because all of a sudden I felt like you had disappeared from the earth. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So she felt that poof because I had, for a moment, and I do every day.
Because you had the divine partnership with the earth.
With the earth.
With the planet,
and with her
I will
too.
get texts and emails. The bird talked to me today, gets this,
Oh,
and I mean,
always.
I get that. I live in the woods, and
Yeah.
literally seeing energy and feeling messages from nature, I think that is one of the divine partnerships that maybe we need to pay a little more attention to.
Well, the animals are always talking. I mean, we just have to listen. So when we just get really quiet, they say all kinds of things. Even Lemon Squeezy the other day, he was in a little panic and having a little issue, and I was in there working with him, and I heard just flew through my head, don't give up on me. Don't give up on me. That was it. And he's flying around. He's not looking at me going, don't give up on me. But I heard that. And that was, and literally maybe 2-3 minutes after, he was fine. And he's like, got it. And the little things like that, but I've had many, many, many things. We could have a whole show on it, write a whole book on that. But it's just about being quiet.
And being one with everything. Being one with nature, being one with the animals, being one with your land. I know years ago when my son first went to college, first time he's been away from home, I would have him literally go back up to a tree. So his back was to a tree, just relax, feel grounded, and then imagine what it was like to literally go into the tree, go above what was happening, and of course he's like, Mom, they're going to think I'm weird. No, they'll think you're meditating. Just go do that. It's such an important partnership to me. He turned out to be a forester. How funny is that? Thanks for getting the joke, Victor. Okay, how cool is that? But I think our partnerships with just the land and nature, you talked about nature. How did that develop for you? I know Sherry, from a young child, is always outside running around. What about you?
Well,
What did you notice?
I was born in Laos, and I think just that part of me and being a part of the Lao Heritage Foundation, really being connected to the homeland, and also watching how my grandmother first communicated with animals. I mean, we had this beautiful home as our childhood home in Maryland, and it was something that my mom and dad worked really hard with their 3 or 4 jobs to buy, you know, after 7 years of coming to the U.S. Wow. And they were able to buy a home with land. And it was watching the mornings when my grandmother would be talking, like, who's she talking to? She'd be talking to the birds and squirrels, and she'd make up stories. Because my grandmother came here much older, so she didn't have friends, she wasn't working, and she needed to have a bond with something so her brain, you know, she could coexist, because the kids would go to school. And then I would watch my father and how he would garden and how he would really talk to the plants and give them the food that they need and plan all year round for the cycle of life and how to rotate, you know, the seeds for next year. And it was just so, to me, looking back now, I realized how important that was for their healing, because they came from war. They both ran from war. They witnessed so much loss and death of loved ones. And I think that's really how I connected to Earth. It's like, gosh, they turned out okay. And they used the earth, they used nature as a part of their healing process, a part of connecting and grounding themselves. And that's how, I think that's where my gardening, my passion for nature comes from, and love to hear songbirds.
That gardening is a powerful image, isn't it? Yeah. It really is. I think of that often with cultivating your clients, there's a way to nurture, the way you nurture a plant or you nurture a pet, you nurture a relationship. It's just a way to pour love into it, isn't it? Yeah. It really is. Do you have any special memories of being connected to the earth or some sort of partnership that, now you're a tech guy, so that's a little different spin in it, isn't it?
Right, yeah.
But what about your connection to the earth or to nature? Anything that really, really feels important to you?
I think my connection to nature is more because I'm older. Because coming from Puerto Rico, I mean, I was born in '74, so everything that I ate from my grandma, she grew, or she raised chickens and grew stuff. So I saw her, raise stuff, kill it, all that stuff, right? But also on the market, like if we wanted avocados, you could only have it, 2 or 3 months out of the year. You didn't have them. You have them when the farm purchaser came down and sold it to your mom. So that connection we had, to food mostly, and as a kid just running around, but not as detailed as you had it with Laos.
But you had a deep connection with another type of vibration, which was music, and that was cultural, and you started playing when you were a baby. So that's another divine connection of yours.
Well, that's different. I mean, everyone in Puerto Rico is like that.
Maybe that's true.
Yeah.
Are they really?
For the most part. They at least play the maracas or something.
I play radio.
Yeah, there you go.
That's it. But that's another example to me of a divine relationship. People that there's difference between being a musician, someone who plays a little bit on the side, and someone who is deeply connected. That's their go-to place in times of drama or trauma, because they get comfort. To me, that's part of the divine partnership too, right? Is there's a comforting element. Do you ever feel that? I know I do. There's just this comfort of coming home to what's true.
That's my go-to place. Also because of culture, especially African culture, when it comes to drumming and stuff like that. And I read a lot about that. So yeah, that is my go-to place. It's definitely music. It also is harmony, right? Everything. That's all music
beautiful.
is, right? Yeah. So
not when I sing, but a lot of times. But what a beautiful word, harmony. That's exactly one of the elements.
Yeah. So that is my go-to. So you explained it better than I would, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank goodness I didn't sing it. Everybody's lucky about that. What about you? Anything else to add to this? Because I know I don't want this to stop, but.
Yeah. Gosh, so much. I don't even know what to pick. Yeah, there's just so much when you open to that space, and I've had so many divine relationships with animals over the years. In fact, we even had horses, obviously, and specific horses and crazy deep stuff. But I'll share a completely different one, and this was a pigeon, a racing pigeon who came into our lives about the time I started my business, and she flew into the barn, white racing pigeon with a little band. and decided that that was going to be her home for a while. And she came at a time when one of my horses was suffering from an illness, and another, we had boarders at the time. That horse was having some trouble, and I was just starting my business. And so it was this transition time for a lot of things. And she stayed, and we named her Paloma Blanca, and white pigeon, and she would march down the barn aisleway with me when I would feed the horses, and she'd follow me, and she'd go, what the heck? And then, so she and I had a very special bond. I talked to her a lot, and then one day she did an aerial display. Actually, I was sitting outside by myself, and this big flock of blackbirds came flying in overhead, huge flock. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. And she raced up, she flew up into the air, and she just traced the perimeter of our property. What the heck? As fast as she could. And these things are racing pigeons, they don't mess around. So they're fast, and she's a little speck, and she's flying around the whole property. And those birds all cleared out. I was like, wow. So I'm watching this, and I'm sitting on the grass, and I'm watching this. And then all of a sudden, she did this nosedive and swooped down, straight down. They do this thing with their wings, and they go straight down into the ground, cleared the ground, came up, and flew back into the barn, and ended up over a horse stall. And I was right there. And she's all puffed up like this. And I said, Paloma Blanca, that was awesome. She's like, but I mean, really, we're having this whole thing, and she ended up leaving after about 2 months or so, and then the horses had healed, and my business was doing well, and she brought all this beautiful love and possibility, and she came back and visited a few times, and in fact, I think, and that was maybe 7, 8 years ago, I think I saw her this past fall. I was in the barn, and there was this little rustling sound, and I looked over, and there was this little white dove, racing pigeon, and had a little band, and it started walking down the aisleway, and it's doing this little thing. I thought, oh, I better go get it some water. And I went to get water, and it came back, and she was gone. But I mean, who?
Wow.
So that's only one story. I mean, there's a million of them.
But it's an important part that sometimes the partnerships come in for a particular period of time, or they have a particular goal that you can or cannot be aware of, and then they go.
Yep.
And that's not right or wrong. It's just part of the flow you were talking about, I think. How cool is that?
Yeah.
Well, I want to give people some tools. Let's go around and give some ideas on how they can create more conscious divine partnerships. So remember, we talked that you might already have a partnership that you could deepen, make it more divine, or there could be some opportunities that you might not be seeing. So Melly, what could be some tips you might give somebody that really wanted to cultivate more conscious divine partnerships in any area of their life?
I would say really take the time to go in, reflect, quiet the noise, and figure out what you really want out of your relationship. Sometimes we don't define what we want out of anything, let alone our relationships, whether it's friendships, whether it's a love relationship, and whether it's a business partnership. Like, what do I desire? What type of feeling, energy, emotion, outcomes, what do I want to manifest in this type of relationship? I think it's the questioning and the curiosity that brings the clarity that you were talking about. If you really, this is for me as well, when I know what I want, and I'm clear and I'm in harmony, and it's like that, like I know because I know, once I get that, all of a sudden, I know it's not magic, but things start to come into your life. It just floods in. All of a sudden, it's like this phone call comes in, and then you get off the phone, you're like, how did that happen? 2 minutes later, another call comes, and you're like, we didn't expect that opportunity. It's be able to know what you want, be able to clearly state it, and be able to release it and share it. Get it out into the universe, get it into other people's ears, because that's when they can start helping to deliver those things. So before any of the partnerships happen, know what you want.
And be open.
And be open
to those calls
receiving it. Exactly.
And how they come. Oh, that's a great idea. What about you, Victor? What tips would you give somebody about helping create more conscious divine partnerships?
All right, and I would say working with my wife, my life partner, one of the things that I would say is like understand what you bring to the relationship as well, and accept that role. And this is very important. It's not a competition. If you think it's a competition, you shouldn't be in that relationship, right? to me, there's no hierarchy, but we do have roles. There are things that I'm naturally good at, and there are things that she's naturally good at. And if she's good at it, I'm going to let her do it because that just benefits me, and I want to support her in it, and vice versa. So it's very important to know those roles. I think if you do that and you let your ego out the door, then you'll do very well.
I actually really love what you said, because I think sometimes in business partnerships, rather it's I see coaches and clients, or I see vendors or whoever, there's not always a respect for the strengths and the skills and the experience that each brings. So I think that is really important. And when you're coming from that more connected, loving place, I think it's maybe a little easier not to feel threatened, would you say?
Yeah, that's correct.
Because that's not a heart space, is it?
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love one thing that we just recently saw, and I hope I can mention this, but a comedian saying, sometimes as a musician, you're the lead singer and sometimes you play the tambourine. Chris Rock said it. It's the same thing, right? Like, you have to know that you're still making good music, but you need somebody needs to play the little sticks, gotta go tick, 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 right, sometimes. And that's not a hierarchy thing. That's just gotta make that harmony and make it happen.
Well, that's a beautiful picture too, because when you're making music, each piece is important, isn't it? Yeah, and it's a completely different composition if one of the pieces is gone. Doesn't mean that it's bad, it just means it's different. But when something's in total harmony and all pieces know their part, that's gorgeous. And I know you're a band girl from way back.
Yeah, I was a musician for a while. So it's kind of all the same thing here. So I'm thinking about it in terms of awareness of self. You mentioned what do I want? So awareness of self, awareness of other. So okay, if you're new to a partnership, or say you're seeking a partnership, what is it that they really need? What do you have that they could really benefit from? Really understanding their needs. So what I see a lot of times is people talking about themselves. This is what I do, this is what I do, and I do this, and I do that, and I do that, and isn't that great? Great. So what? So great. Good for you. And that's good to know. But the thing is, if you're going to go look for a partner, or if you're going to even go try to get a client, you really want to be able to know what does the other most need. How can you best support other? How can you really do that? And be able to let them know how you can support them. So that clarity piece comes in there, because only then, once you have awareness of self, awareness of other, then you can co-create an amazing experience together. But without all those parts, we don't have that. So I would say, check your own stuff. What's going on here? What's going on with whoever you might want to partner with? And be sure that you are showing up as a value add to the other. That's the biggest thing. And in order to show up as a value add, you need to know what do they need, and where do I best plug in? And then just get after it. I've seen some amazing things happen where somebody's kind of invisible over here forever, and knocking on the door, invisible, no voice, no nothing, but they keep it. And then all of a sudden, by adding just a little offering, maybe they contribute to something on a nonprofit board, or some charitable event, or some other kind of speaking thing, or whatever it is, they show up, and all of a sudden, the other person is ready, and they see them, and they're like, wow, I didn't know you did this. Oh my gosh. And the timing is right for both parties, and then amazing things can happen. So sometimes there's a little bit of perseverance as well.
And that even those little steps change the energy, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think one of the most important things also is to go within. To me, you start with meditation, but you have divine partnerships with your body, with being healthy, mentally, physically, spiritually, so that you are in optimal shape in all those areas to be a loving partner, to be of service, and ask when you need help, because I just think that's an integral part of this partnership. There's going to be, as long as we respect everybody's places, right, there are just certainly going to be times when you need to ask for help. That's part of a partnership as well, right? We're all coaches and consultants. We need somebody to coach and consult. We need somebody ask for help. And then we need to know when to ask for help and when to go inside. But to me, everything starts with that meditative inside place, connecting to the divine. So I know the difference between my ego place, my divine place, so that I can, as much as I can, every day, moment by moment, come from a place of love and be a more loving presence. I find when that is able to occur, then that service piece is just flows. It's just so natural. It's just the way everything works. That's what's really important to me. But I really hope you all have gotten some wonderful ideas on how you can enhance your own partnerships, how you might be able to make them more divine, your partnership with yourself, your partnership with any business, ideas, family, all of those sorts of things, pets, the environment. I hope you've gotten a lot out of today. But I want to ask our guests to share with us where you can get some more information. So for SOAR, what website would they go to?
They can go to SOAR, S-O-A-R, communitynetwork.com, and they can find us all over social media, all of the channels. Please follow us, write comments, let us know how we can support you.
And Sherry.
Yeah, so they can go to www.jaeger2, and that's Jaeger, the number 2.com, and also check out the YouTube site for Reinvention in the Round. That's where you're going to see some of the horse work, and all that's free. There's no opt-in, no liability. You just check it out and enjoy. So thank you.
And everybody has links on their website to your social media, right?
Yes.
That's great. So I want to thank my guests, Mali, Victor, Sherry. Thank you very much for being here and sharing your insights about divine partnerships. I want to thank our wonderful crew. I want to thank everybody that creates heart-centered success. I especially want to thank our producer, Tremaine Johnson. That's my divine partnership right there of Love Unleashed Productions. None of this would occur if it weren't for Tremaine. Thanks, Bud. I appreciate it. Thanks to all our family and friends. This is Heart-Centered Success. I'm Diane Hayworth, and I'll see you next time.
See that cute little dog in the pet store window? Chances are it came from a puppy mill, a breeding facility that forces caged, neglected, and often sick dogs to churn out puppy after puppy to be sold for profit. Meanwhile, millions of wonderful, healthy pets end up in animal shelters. This leads to the killing of more than 9,000 by the end of today. But with one simple choice, you can help, just by deciding to adopt instead of purchase your next pet. Animal shelters are full of amazing pets looking for a home. When you adopt your new best friend, not only are you saving a life, you're taking a stand against puppy mills. Now imagine sharing the joy of adopting with your friends. Seeing the smart choice and impact you've made, they adopt their next pets and share with 5 of their friends who share with 5 more. Before long, thousands get involved. Pet stores stop selling dogs from puppy mills, and even more lives are saved. And with your help, we can save them all. Visit bestfriends.org to learn more.